Tom Brady feels like the Undertaker coming out of the casket and looking to wreck shop against everybody. Everything in my being tells me that this is the wrong call, but I see him popping up, and he looks like he's ready to take on the world. And welcome to Pocket Protection in association with TDR, brought to you by Bet99 Sportsbook. Every game starts at Bet99.com. We are responsible gambling. I'm Ryan Doyle. That is Steve Budin. Good to see you, sir.
All right, this is where the rubber meets the road, my favorite part of the week.
This is my favorite part of the week by far. And let me start off with this. Experts get it wrong. This is the one thing that I hate about giving my picks out. People will sit there and get on you the second you get a game wrong. They don't seem to understand or care that for professional sports bettors, a long-term winning percentage of around 55% is actually ideal. The reason that we live in a world where experts never say they are wrong, that they never show their scars, I don't like that. The reason they do that is because they want you to tell you every single time that they're winners. Well, folks, that's not going to happen every single time. I'm not going to be right on every game. Steve's not going to be right on every single game. I strive to achieve that 55%. So write that down. And now that I'm telling you that, believe that. If something goes wrong, if I get a game wrong, if Steve gets a game wrong, get off our ass, because that's not how the business works. Am I wrong about that?
Actually, yeah, I would say that 50% is more like it. When you look at lifetime achievement from a record standpoint of even the top, most sharpest gamblers in the world, it's a 50-50 proposition. The difference between winning in your bankroll and losing in your bankroll is being able to identify that one game on the board where you're going to actually, that's going to be your big play of the day, or your only play of the day for that matter. But in a show setting like this, in a format like this, where if we were only going to each give our best bet on the air, it's a 6-minute, two-game show. No one's watching that. People want to hear about every single game. So in a lot of cases, we're forced to bring opinions on games that we would absolutely never bet. And in the same respect, we're not going to intro every game and go, okay, this is a game that we absolutely would not bet, but here's your analysis anyway. That's not what you want me on the show for. You want me on the show to take a position on every game that you want to talk about. And that's what I'm going to do for the benefit of the show. When it comes to gambling, professional gamblers can rate their games properly, bet a lot on the games that they win, bet less on the games that they lose, and in there is where you have a chance to turn a profit for the season.
Now, here's where we were wrong. We were wrong on the Las Vegas Raiders last night. This game was...
We were right for about 3.5 quarters.
We were right for a very long time, feeling very comfortable. In all honesty, yeah, did I play that game last night? I did. I was very confident, very bullish on the Raiders going into it. They seemed to have some red zone woes, and those cost them and bit them in the ass a little later on down the road when Baker Mayfield got it together and put together one hell of a drive at the end of that game, hit Von Jefferson late, and next thing you know, the Rams were in charge and the Rams were winning that game. Surprised at the end of it all?
Sure, I was surprised. I mean, you're looking at Baker Mayfield, and you almost have to drug test him after that game. I mean, wow, and not even just like in the beginning of the game. It took him till the very end to kind of work this magic. I did have some takeaways from the game. I'm happy to go through them if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so I mean, number one, and I'll give you 4 takeaways. I mean, can you imagine what it would be like to run a 2-minute drill for a team you've only been on for 2 days? Mayfield and the Rams got the ball back with 1:45 seconds left in regulation. Down 6 points on their own 2-yard line, no timeouts. I mean, this is something that maybe we've seen Brady do a couple of times in his entire career. Now you've got, Baker, the touchdown maker, Mayfield, that's what they're calling him now. And he did the impossible. 6 passes, 98 yards. Either this is a complete fluke, Ryan, or it's the official start of the Baker Mayfield comeback tour. And look, the good news is finally the Rams have something to smile about again. It's been a long season for them. Number 2, Mayfield didn't start the game, right? But he sure did finish it. John Wolford went 3 and out, and Sean McVay saw enough, and he yanked him. He put in Mayfield, and Baker's first 3 completions were for 21 yards or more. He finished the game with 230 yards. He went from 0 to hero in about 3 days. So make no mistake about it, this was his 2022 moment. For Raiders fans, number 3, and me and you included, we're not fans, but we certainly were investors. Just when you thought there was hope, you get crushed. The Raiders were up 16-3, middle of the fourth quarter. Me and you both thought it was over. Looked like an easy win, looked like their fourth straight victory. And then they did what the Saints did with the Bucs on Monday night. They took their foot off the gas, they fell asleep, and they got beat. So maybe the Raiders are who we thought they were before this 3-game winning streak. And finally, number 4 for the Raiders, Josh Jacobs. He's tough, man, but they've run him into the ground. Through 13 games, 269 carries, 44 catches, 313 touches. That's a league high. There's still 4 games left. I mean, this is a one-man show, and a one-man show doesn't work, and that's my Thursday night recap.
Yeah, I like it, and I'm with you on all of those points. I do think, though, the Rams, if Baker does this again, or at least comes up with a complete game once he's given the chance to start, which he will be, it's going to be an interesting team, and they're going to have some interesting choices to make, especially if Matty Stafford is not going to be 100%. They might have to fish or cut bait with that quarterback and move on to Baker Mayfield, who looked different with a different team, different uniform on, but again, a couple days to learn the playbook, and he got there. Let's talk about our playbook when it comes to handicapping. Leading up to the playoffs, obviously it's a different football has a different vibe to it, and I think we've crossed over that Rubicon. We've crossed over that threshold. Should we be looking at games when it comes to gambling leading up to the playoffs differently when we're doing our handicapping?
Well, I wouldn't look at it differently. I would just know that we're always taking, all contingencies, into consideration. And when you got a team that's playing for its playoff life against a team that has no chance, that should be factored into your handicapping. When you've got 2 teams playing for their playoff lives, that should be factored into your handicapping. And when you've got 2 teams that aren't going to make the playoffs, no matter what they do, that should be factored into your handicapping. So at the end of the day, the situations change, but your mindset as a handicapper stays the same. You're still looking at your gut instinct. You're still looking at all the facts, and you're still listening to as much good advice as you can, but at the end of the day, knowing that that decision still lies with you and the buck stops here.
All right,
as a handicapper.
You mentioned the teams that are playing each other that have no hope of getting to the playoffs. Are those games that you bet, or do you cross them off your board? Because I think there is a number of theories out there. Some guys like to lean right into it, the garbage games, because they feel like they've got a better vibe on them. Some people say, well, if it doesn't matter, how do I know who's trying and who's not?
Well, the advantage is you don't have a lot of action on those games, so that line is not being sharpened up. The least amount of action bet on the game, the more there's a chance that your line might be different than the actual line. And I think that you continue to do that system that you do. You're a gambler that makes his own line every week. You continue to make that line every week. And if the largest discrepancy is in a game that doesn't matter for each team, so be it. Do you trust your opinion? I think you do. And I think you don't start throwing games out before you analyze them.
All right, we're going to talk about some of those games. We've got a lot on the slate, including our best picks, the games to stay away from. We'll do all of that as Pocket Protection continues.
As a world champion, when I walked out of the tunnel, I knew I prepared to win. I still do today. Every game starts at Bet99.net.
Welcome to Bet99.net, Canada's home for all your favorite free-to-play casino games, slots, live dealer tables, and progressive jackpots, including Mega Moolah. At Bet99.net, you could be a winner today.
Welcome back to Pocket Protection in association with TDR, brought to you by Bet99 Sportsbook. Every game starts at Bet99.com. We are responsible gambling. Steve, I want to start off here. The Lions are an offense on fire. Yes, the Lions. You are likely laughing when you hear me say that, but almost 30% of the Lions' possessions have resulted in TDs. They trail only the Eagles and Kansas City over the last little while. They've scored on 53.8% of their drives in the last 4 weeks, second to only the Chiefs over the same period. And, I might add, they are averaging 6.8 yards per passing play. Stop looking at the brand name and start realizing that this is a team about to pop once their defense gets in check. Let's start off with that game. The Detroit Lions, -2 versus Minnesota. 51 is the total here. A lot of people surprised the Lions are the favorite.
Yeah, look, they used to call this team the lie downs. You know what I mean? But not anymore. You know what I mean? They're an elite offense, no other way to say it. even though their defense right now belongs on the side of a milk carton. That being said, a lot of hope going into the offseason, as it's much easier to put together a good defense than it is to put together a good offense and a good defense. So they're halfway there. Look, Minnesota, they were life and death to beat the Jets, who I thought should have won that game. Yeah. You know, the Vikings' tendency is to always be in these close games, and that's going to bite them in the ass in this one. Detroit, they're coming off a monster offensive game. Goff threw for 340 yards, couple of touchdowns, no interceptions, nearly flawless football there from him. Look, neither one of these teams play any defense. So the question comes down to whose offense do you like better? I like Detroit's offense better, so I'm going with the lie downs here, the Lions, to get the cover.
All right, let me do this because I don't think I've done this in the last couple shows. I'm going to give you a correlated parlay. You heard what I had to say about the Lions. It stands. They're red hot. Their defense is absolute trash, but so's Minnesota's. And I will continue to say, I know you're off a little bit of the Minnesota's a fraud bandwagon. I'm still driving the bus, Steve. I am still driving that bus, baby. I don't believe in this team. Yeah. You know, I can't wait.
This Minnesota team has hit me with so many lefts. I'm begging for a right.
Exactly, please. So, bring it on. I like Detroit. I think in some spaces you can get -1.5. You know, you'll have foolish bettors out there that see the Minnesota name, not understand why they're the underdog, and pile money on. You might even close to game time get this as a pick'em. I like Detroit at this point -2, and I like over the total of 51 based on what we just said about the defenses. It's going to be a high-scoring, high-scoring affair where both teams kind of just play to the end whistle, but Detroit comes out on top. So give me Detroit. And give me the over. Pittsburgh -2 versus Baltimore. The total here 37.
Right, so if you would have told me a couple of weeks ago the Steelers would be making a run at the playoffs, then I would have drug tested you. Meanwhile, back-to-back scrappy wins on the road. And, sure enough, Mike Tomlin and the Steelers are just one game, out of the last playoff spot in the AFC with still a month of football left. Look, TJ Watt coming back in mid-November. That's big. Rookie quarterback Kenny Pickett. Look, he's no Big Ben, right? But he's not hurting the Steelers. He's had no picks in the last 4 games. And Ravens are without Lamar Jackson, and that's all I need to say about that. I have no confidence in a Baltimore team without their star quarterback. So give me Pittsburgh here, minus the points.
It was really interesting to see how much the Ravens rely on Lamar Jackson. That offense could not get anywhere with Hundley. It took them forever to get in the end zone. They squeaked out the game at the end. Again, you're right. I mean, Lamar Jackson is the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens receivers might as well be in the witness protection program. When you got guys like Duvernay lining up in the 1 or 2 spot, I'm sorry, those are not choice receivers we're talking about here. That's the scrap heap they're pulling people off of. Kenny Pickett is what he is. As Steve said, he's serviceable. He's a guy who's getting things done. The team believes in him. So I'm going to go with Pittsburgh as well here, minus the 2 points. Philadelphia, the Eagles, -7 at the New York Giants, a desperate Giants team. The total here, 45.
Yeah, well, the Giants kind of remind me of my first marriage in the first 9 years. Like, I started off, it was all rainbows and butterflies until the shit hit the fan. Giants started out the season winning 7 of their first 9 games, but it's been all downhill from there. Now they're trying to limp into the playoffs, but their defense, to me, looks completely shot, and that's not going to go well for them against, in my opinion, the league MVP, Jalen Hurts, and this Eagle team, who they've got the best record in the NFL, and they're thinking and feeling and looking at Super Bowl, and rightfully so. But a deeper look into the gambling aspect of this game shows that the Eagles are anything but reliable on the road for gamblers. I mean, they may be unbeaten straight up, but they're only 1-4 against the line. And remember, Hurts had one of his worst games last year at the Meadowlands. He tossed 3 picks in those windy conditions. He doesn't do well over there in Jersey. He lost that game 13-7. The G-men have only lost 3 times versus the points this season. So the question is to gamblers, is 7 points too many to give this New York Giants? 7 points too many to give this New York Giants team. I say no. I'm going to take the Eagles in this one.
Interesting. First of all, don't turn the fans on at Steve's house. You never know what's going to come off of them. I'm on the opposite side here. I think the Giants are desperate, and I think your read on the Eagles not being a good cover team on the road is the right one. The 7 points seems high for me. I don't trust. There's a couple of teams in the league I just don't trust, and I know it sounds crazy to not trust teams that have only a couple of losses on their records, like the Vikings, like the Eagles, but they just don't pass the gut test for me. I wish I had a better explanation out there for you, but when I look at the team, I'm hesitant to lay major points. If this was a 4.5-point line, I'd say, okay, no problem, I'll take the Eagles. It's obvious. At 7, it doesn't feel obvious. They're on the road. It's a divisional game. The Giants need this game. They are desperate, so they're going to play with desperation, and they still have some nice pieces that they can move around the field. So give me the Giants plus 7 in this game against the Eagles.
So either you'll be right about that, or you'll just add the Giants to that list of teams you can't trust.
Well, it's exactly it. And I'll maybe have to omit the Eagles at that point, but that's the way football and betting works, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You've got to ask yourself this question. Why do the Browns own Joe Burrow? He is 0-4 against Cleveland, and a couple of those have been blowouts. But why is it happening? The Bengals have surrendered the first score in 3 of the 4 games. By doing so, they've allowed the Browns to play their brand of run-heavy football while giving their defense more opportunities to pin their ears back and rush Burrow. Burrow spends way too much time in these matchups on his back. He's been sacked 17 times by the Browns, and if the Bengals can't solve that, this is a streak that's going to continue for a very long time, which brings us to our game. Cleveland plus 5.5 at Cincinnati. The total here, 46.5.
Yeah, and I think the reason why, Ryan, is because oftentimes in the last 10 years, maybe more, for the Browns, this is like their Super Bowl, right? It's the Battle of Ohio. Cincinnati has playoff aspirations. They have postseason, things going on. They're looking forward to the playoff run. Cleveland's never looking forward to the playoff run, right? So it's always like, this is our moment. This is our game. If nothing else, let's prove to Ohio that we're the real Ohio team. And I think that's what's going on here, that you always have to beware of a motivated football team, right? But to me, I throw all that out here. This one's not going to be close. The Bengals are playing too good right now. There's no offense at all for the Browns. No chance to keep up with Cincinnati. The Bengals have covered 4 of the last 6 in this series. This one, again, to me, it's a blowout, but not the way you're thinking. I think Cincinnati blows this team out. I'm taking the Bengals here.
Yeah, listen, I'm not saying I was on the Browns here. I'm just stating the fact that they've been owned. I think in this case, your read is right, because I think the Cincinnati defense might be the difference maker in all of this. Deshaun Watson, I'm sorry. This guy, he looks like exhibition game Deshaun Watson. He doesn't look confident as quarterback. He looks kind of shaky. I don't think he's adapted to his new home in Cleveland at this point. The locker room has been playing around Jacoby Brissett for the better part of the season. And I think when you look at the Bengals defense, Steve, they're able to rush the quarterback with just 4 men, which is very impressive. And one of the things, not many NFL teams are able to do. It gave Patrick Mahomes fits. I like the idea that they're able to still drop back, still get effective pressure on the quarterback. I'm going to take the Bengals here at what I think is a short line given history, but I don't see history repeating itself. Houston, man, this is a line. Plus 17 at the Dallas Cowboys, the number 44. Wow, 17 points being given to an NFL team. You taking the cheese?
And you're right. And in college, this is something that we see all the time. And, we actually have no problem laying this type of number in college. It happens. There's 25, 28-point, 30-point favorites in college that blow teams out all the time. It's very rare for the NFL. But you can't let the odds makers scare you off a good bet. They're clearly daring you here to bet Dallas. They probably want no action on this game at all. That's why you see a line like that. And the Texans, they own the NFL's worst record, 1-10-1. They're the only team in the league that's already mathematically eliminated from playoff contention. 8 consecutive games for Houston now where they failed to score more than 20 points. So you got to ask yourself, can Dallas score 35 points or more? The answer is absolutely they can. The Texans have lost 7 in a row by an average of 12.5 points. This is a big number, but I would lay the wood with the boys. I'm going to go with the Cowboys here, minus the points.
Not so fast, my friend Steve Budin. Okay, the Texans have been underdogs, double-digit underdogs 3 times this season in NFL play. Twice they have covered. You remember that game against Philadelphia on the Thursday nighter, where they actually almost won that game. Philadelphia looked out of their, over their skis, not really comfortable with what they were doing. And then there was the game against Miami when they went down about 30 points, and Houston came storming back. Didn't get the cover, but damn, that game was close at at the end, even though Miami had their backups on the field. I think this Houston team is chippy. I think just because they're a team that is eliminated doesn't mean they're a team that's lacking heart. They've got a great running game. Every other piece on this team is garbage, and they need a quarterback to put it back together. I'm not going to say that I'm getting a Texans jersey and I'm switching the helmets out behind me, but I like the 17 points. I'm comfortable with that, especially if Dallas starts pulling players and starts resting guys. Houston could hang around and perhaps get a backdoor, so give me the Houston Texans plus 17. That moves us to Jacksonville, plus 4 at the Tennessee Titans, who look like they're fading fast. The total here, 41.5.
Yeah, I mean, the Jaguars looked good for a minute, right? They had a strong stretch, the comeback win over the Raiders, which now maybe means a little bit less. A solid performance against the Chiefs and a wild win over the Ravens to close November. But they've clearly, they've taken a big step backwards. They were blown out of the water in Detroit, 40-14. Trevor Lawrence is now 1-12 in true road games through his first 2 seasons. And remember, he was picked off 4 times in his first trip to Nashville. That was a 20-0 loss as a rookie. The Titans also coming off a big loss, 35-10 to Philly, a much better team, much more respectable in the loss. And the Titans own the Jags. They've won 10 out of 11 against this team. The thing is, both of these teams focus their offense around the run game, right? Neither one of them has much of a deep threat. While I can see a slight advantage with playing the Titans, I really think the right bet here is under the posted total. I think they're going to run us to death in this game, so I'm going to take under the posted total.
Yeah, no real vibe, and I was hot on the Titans for a while there. No real vibe on who's going to win this game, to be honest with you. I think they're both teams headed in the wrong direction, but the total is appealing, as Steve says, and I'm on the same side. It's the under, 41.5. Two divisional opponents grinding it out. Tennessee likely gets the win, but do they get the cover at 4 points? No. If this line was 2.5, I would take it and jump in a heartbeat on Tennessee. At 4, right, that's too high for my blood, too rich for me. I'm going to stick with the under of 41.5. Tampa plus 3.5 against the Brock Purdy-led San Francisco 49ers. Total here, 38. Bookmakers not really thinking there's going to be a lot of points here.
No, and look, Jimmy G's out with his foot. Trey Lance, he's out a long time ago for the season. So it comes down to Iowa State rookie Brock Purdy, as you alluded to in the intro. And let me tell you something. Last week when Jimmy G went down, the Niners offense didn't skip a beat with Purdy, for what's that worth, 25 of 37 passes. And San Francisco had their best win of the season over the dangerous Dolphins. One thing that remains the same, though, from game to game in every game this year so far, is San Fran's got the best defense on the planet. Point blank. Most gamblers are going to look at this game and they're going to say, oh, this is the ultimate quarterback mismatch, Tom Brady versus Purdy, especially after Brady's miracle win on Monday night versus the Saints. But you got to remember, Brady was outscored by P.J. Walker and Jacoby Brissett in recent weeks.
Wow.
And he was 3 seconds from being outscored by Andy Dalton on Monday. So look, these aren't the Bucs of the past 2 seasons. Don't get it twisted. And no matter who the quarterback is, the Niners have now won 9 of their last 10, 8-2 versus the line at home. I'm taking the Niners here.
Do you watch wrestling?
I do, all the time.
You remember?
Let me tell you something, Gordon Soley.
you remember you remember the old Undertaker bit, right, where he'd be dead to rights and then he'd get up out of the casket?
Yep.
Everything tells me in my being that the Niners are the way better team in this game, that the Niners probably have a much better chance of going to the Super Bowl. But this feels like Tom...
I felt the butt coming on.
The butt is coming on. Tom Brady feels like the Undertaker coming out of the casket and looking to wreck shop against everybody. Everything in my being tells me that this is the wrong call. But I see him popping up, and he looks like he's ready to take on the world. So for me, I've got to go with Tampa. And I feel like, Steve, this is the conversation we're going to be having a couple weeks from now when we get into the playoffs and perhaps these two teams meet each other, where we look back at this game. It reminds me of when the Patriots played the Giants years ago, right before the Giants upset them in the Super Bowl. This has got that vibe to it. This is the Tom Brady kind of comeback moment that we've all been waiting for. It's here. I know I'm crazy. I know you're looking at me like I'm crazy, but I got to take the Bucs.
I'd like to say I'm a little older than you, but I'm a lot older than you, unfortunately. A little. And, I just remember Brady's last year for the Patriots, and how it really mimicked this year that he's having, with the Bucks. And we all just felt all year that any game now we're going to see that old Brady come back and light it up again. And it never happened. And we made so much money betting on Brady throughout his career that at some point you think he owes you something, but he doesn't. And if you keep putting that money on the line, I can tell you as a crap player, eventually it's 7 out. And 7 out means we're coming out. So I don't know. You could be right, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, let's wait and see. That's why they play the game. Let's finish up. Miami minus 3.5 at the Chargers. The total here 52. This is a game apparently everybody wants to see because it's been put on the main network and flexed to the Sunday night game.
Well, listen, I'm here in Miami, right? And I'm a believer in Miami. They say it's a sunny place for shady people. I'll attest to that. But I'm not a believer in Miami outside of Miami. Not when they're on the road and not when they're without a healthy Tua and not with a defense that allowed the San Francisco backup Purdy, the last player chosen in last year's draft, to complete 25 of 37 passes for 210 yards with a pair of touchdowns versus only 1 interception. Now, Tua's going to play, but he's going to play like he did last week versus San Francisco. He's going to play hurt. And Los Angeles hasn't been great, that's true, but they've lost 3 of the last 4, and they're scrambling for a wild card slot. So in that scramble, right, there's plenty of motivation for them to turn it up if they can. So I'm still going to go against Miami here on the road with a limping quarterback. So give me the points.
Yeah, I don't trust Tua. I'm sorry to say it. I just don't trust the guy. I don't trust him injured, especially. They're going to build this matchup as Herbert versus Tua. I still think Herbert is the better quarterback. He's been dealt a bad hand after bad hand after bad hand. I think he's going to upset here when it comes to the LA Chargers. I think they win this game outright. So give me the 3.5 points against Miami, who I think is going to limp to the finish line. They've got some tough games coming up. They've got to play in Buffalo in the weather next weekend. They might be looking ahead to that game as well. They haven't gone home, basically, right? They played San Francisco, then they play, the Chargers. Now they go back down to Florida after that, then they go back up to Buffalo. I think this is a nightmare scenario for the Dolphins. So give me the Los Angeles Chargers plus those 3.5 points. How's that sound for an ending, Steve?
No, I love it. I think you're right on.
Yeah, there we go. Steve Budin, always a pleasure, my friend.
You got it, my brother.
Right, just don't touch his fans. That's what you want to stay away from. Pocket protection in association with TDR, brought to you by Bet99 Sportsbook. Every game starts at Bet99.com. We are responsible gambling.